didn't like school. Did I say that? I hated school. I wore black. I wore black shirt, black pants, black socks, black underwear. Because I thought I was going to die. I hated school. I really did. I really did. I wasn't good in school particularly. I was disinterested. I didn't think anything about the teachers at the time, but in retrospect they really weren't very good. They were doing their jobs. It wasn't the teachers though, it was the other kids. I really didn't. If it hadn't been for Jim and one or two other friends of mine, it would have been very difficult. There was a fellow named Alfred Rogers. He drove a Studebaker. A Studebaker, the one with the nose piece that looks like a rocket ship. I can't remember, 1950s I guess. It had a V8 and 3-speed column shift. Alfred Rogers, great guy. I really enjoyed him. There are a lot of stories I could tell about him and us. But aside from him and 2 or 3 others and Jim, I really didn't have any friends. I didn't enjoy it. I was in the band. I played first clarinet in the band. Maybe that made me unpopular too. I don't know. In any case, as I said, I was glad when, or I didn't say it, but you can imagine, I was glad when I was out of school. And when I went to college, I realized education could be very different than it had been. That region there is called the Calumet region. Calumet, by the way, if I remember correctly, is the name of an American Indian peace pipe. That area is called the Calumet region, and as a consequence, the people there referred to it as the region. And when you were from the region, oftentimes people would look at you with a certain respect, which means fear. They didn't have anything to fear with me. I went to college, and that's a story in itself. I studied everything from engineering, physics, to music, to veterinary medicine, world literature. And finally, my father finally said one day, "I think it's wonderful you're getting a well-rounded education, but it would be good if you finished up," since he was footing the bill. So I went to my counselor and I said, "Hey, you know, I've got all these years behind me here. Well, what can I graduate in?" And he said, he looked through all of my records and said, "Chemistry." And I said, "No. Oh, no. Chemistry laboratories stink. I don't want to be a chemist." Well, he said, "Then microbiology." So I said, "Okay, microbiology is good. I like little things, so we'll take microbiology." That's how I started my career. It was really just a career. I mean, a career. It was it's a way to earn money. I would have liked to have gone on working for the railroad, actually. It's a good thing I didn't. Of course, there are no crossing jobs left anymore. Everything's done automatically and with electronics these days. Another interesting story about something that happened on the railroad. In that first tower, the little box tower where I nearly saw the end of the world happen. I was working that tower in a night shift too. It was after midnight. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, I think. And a fast freight was coming. I put the gates down, and I waved at the engineer. He waved back. Those days they even had the windows open on the locomotives. Today, of course, everything's air conditioned, so the locomotives are all shut up. He waved back at me, probably going 50 miles an hour. And the train went on. It was a long freight. And I was a little bit surprised that there was not a caboose on the end. In fact, I was very surprised because those trains always had cabooses at that time. And I put up the gates I was putting up the second gate. Fortunately, like I said, it was 1 in the morning. There was no automobile traffic. I put up the gates just as I got the second gate up. I looked, and there came boxcars, a row of boxcars at 50 miles per hour. His train had separated, and the boxcars had fallen behind. Well, they weren't going 50 anymore, or they weren't going as fast as he was, but they were still going plenty fast. And they were zipping right along through there with no indication whatsoever, no lights, no nothing. That was pretty exciting. I quick put down the gates so that nobody would come through because, although if anybody had gone through, they'd have been hit. I was quite alarmed. I didn't understand at the time how air brakes on a train work. But I would have suspected that if the couplings, I mean the glad hands came apart between the cars, the brakes would have set, but that's not the way they work. So I had on the wall of this little shack where the little box was with the light that tells me that the New York Central was going through fast, there was also another little telephone. A wooden box about this big with a mouthpiece and a receiver on the side and a crank. And you picked up the receiver and held it to your ear and you cranked the crank. And then if you were lucky, somebody at the other end said, and you knew that you had successfully contacted someone. So I got the guy that would be on further, and I told him that the train had separated and that there were about 30 boxcars running free. And since that was a slight decline from there on, they would probably continue going on and they might even go faster for a while. So he was quite excited and asked me when exactly it went through, and he said, "Oh, here's the train. Here's the locomotive now." So the locomotive just got to him. Must have been about 20 miles down. Somewhere near Ogden Dunes or somewhere. I have no idea how far down south it was. But in any case, not Ogden Dunes. No, I don't know where it went. In any case, he was able then to contact the engineer, I guess, who then applied the brakes slowly and let the boxcars catch up with him, I presume. In any case, I asked the next day whether there'd been an accident or any problems, and they said no, the train had successfully stopped and they had reconnected it. Those are some of the little stories, some of the things that happened. I did enjoy that job very much. And working for the railroad has something romantic about it that I guess everybody knows about. It's hard to explain why. But I enjoyed it. When I worked out on the ground, I also enjoyed being right there next to the track. I oftentimes got to talk to the maintenance of way workers that would come by, and they give me a ride sometimes in the little speeders they use, the Fairmont motor cars. A locomotive engineer one time stopped. We talked, and I said I was walking down to the next crossing, and he said, "Come, get in, you can ride with me." And actually, I rode on the front of the locomotive, standing on the front, holding onto the rail, which was really pretty exciting, I have to say. I enjoyed that. Created a lot of memory. So there you are, just some tales of youth, tales of angry steel workers, tales of a nerd ahead of his time. I hope I didn't bore everybody. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my coffee here and my cookies. And then I'm going to get to work. There's a number of jobs that I have to do again today. Thanks again. Bye.